glad to see that you weren't sick. I'm worried about you guys.
Well, thank you.
Got it. Hot.
Some people I'm tired.
Got the biggest piece.
For my mom. No, I was down here helping.
That's what I found out. Yeah.
I know. I said my mom said, "Fine, just dessert me." I was like, "Well, we decided it was time for you to get out on your own."
They says, "You want me to cut that piece off?" I says, "No, my wife just wants it taste. She doesn't want it, but she'll always take it." So that's it's a big mark for you. Take your taste.
I'm trying to picture him with chocolate frosting all over his beard.
How much is it worth? It's true, I have a price.
You can't be bought.
I can be bought.
Depends on how much
I'm
you want to
for
give.
Congress, did I tell you? I'd like to be Speaker of the House.
At least start at home.
There's a shirt. No, shirt. There's one that says, you know that little thing in the brain that tells you when you're going to say something? Yeah, I don't have one of those. Yeah. I keep trying to buy that.
When they said brains, I thought they said trains, and I thought I pitched the next one.
Years ago, going to
And then I looked at the house. And that's what I said. Yeah, I gotta find this. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, continue eating and such, but I think we'll begin. And if you haven't got dessert yet, feel free to go and get it and that, but we don't want to be here till 5 o'clock. Just kidding. Let's start off with a prayer, and then what I want to do is kind of give a summary of the small groups. And I said summary. So if you made a comment on the small groups and I don't say it, that's okay. Okay. I didn't write down everybody's comments. I got the feel for what the answers were for each of the questions. And there's one question that I kind of skipped, but that's okay. So let's open in prayer and then we'll get started. This time is not for me or the transition team to talk all the time. We have a walking mic, one or two, one mic, two walking mics. And so what it is that once we start with the history or the life and legacy timeline, if you have a story at one point in the timeline, raise your hand and we'll give you the mic. And I know we're Lutherans, we don't like to talk out in public, but that's okay. This isn't public, this is family. Or as someone mentioned this morning, do I miss Maui at this point in time? Yes, but this is not as cold as Minot, North Dakota at this time. It's below zero, and I told my wife that last night. I said, this is warm compared to Minot, not compared to Maui. But if you have, as I said, as we go down the timeline and the legacy timeline, if you have a story about anything, please input. Give us some stories, because that's what this is all about. It's your story. It's Immanuel, the body of Christ at Immanuel Lutheran Church story. So let's open in prayer, and then I'll continue on. Heavenly gracious Lord, we give you thanks and praise for this day. As we now have some closure on some of the journey, the transition journey, we pray that you be with us now as we kind of continue to go through the journey, but yet to close out on a couple tasks We thank you in Jesus Christ's name. Amen. Okay, small group summary. There was a cross-section of members who were newer or new, and members that had been a member for 86 years. So we had that time span, and that's what we were looking for, was a cross-section of newer people and older members, as well as male and female. And so we got a good cross-section. Kay's not here, but I think we had over 60, 65 people or more go through the small groups. So it had a good turnout for that. What do you enjoy about being a member of Immanuel? Some of the comments was, a lot of the comments, I should say, is fellowship. Look at the potluck that we have, and there's another one next month. Friendliness, caring, hearing the Word of God preached, Word and Sacrament, communion, Bible studies, traditions, divine worship plus variety, welcoming, Stephen's ministry, family and youth ministry. So that's what was enjoyed or being enjoyed here at Immanuel. Changes. And we're going to see most of that as we walk through the timeline, a lot of the changes that came up. Vicarage, building expansion, neighborhood change, Stephen ministry, library, and more Bible studies. And even someone put women's suffrage as a change. And believe it or not, I don't know, I haven't looked at when we ask for names of pastors, the elders will get their self-evaluation tool, self-evaluation, SET, self-evaluation tool, and the PIF, personal information file. The SET, self-evaluation tool, has questions that the pastors had to answer about their theology and about their practice and that. And one question, as I said, I haven't looked at mine recently, but there was one question about how do you feel about women's suffrage? Really? So someone saw that change. 5 years from now, what would you like to see? More outreach to surrounding area, more outreach to youth, continue conservative teaching, holding fast to our doctrine and moral values, word and sacrament, being administered by the Lutheran confessions, increased membership, vicarage program, more potlucks. What is Immanuel doing well? Fellowship, worship, Sunday school, Bible studies, and vicarage program. Those are the majority of the what are we doing well. Top 4 ministries you'd like to see. Top 4 ministries of Immanuel. Worship, word and sacrament, divine service. So you see all this is being repeated, in all these questions, even though the questions are different questions. Education of all ages, Stephen's ministry, vicarage program, prayer chain, quilting, braille, youth and family, neighborhood outreach, and women's groups. And then, what else would you like to say about the congregational life at Immanuel? Healthy, dedicated people who are warm and caring, active ministries, conservative, welcoming, friendly and loving congregation, strong congregation. All this also helps when we get to that point of doing the self-study. And everyone will get to participate in at least one part of the self-study. The self-study starts with how many in attendance, how many in Sunday school, how many in Bible studies, how many, that stuff. But then there's also a part that says, what are the traits you're looking for in your next full-time pastor? That's where the whole congregation gets to have some input in that. So number 9 was, what is important to you as far as next full-time pastor? To lead and teach the Word of God, be relational to all ages, scripturally sound in teaching and preaching, compassion, Lutheran conservative, faithfulness, team player, equipper, good counselor, outgoing, sense of humor, and a servant's heart. So those are basically the summary of all the small groups. Those basically are what a lot of people said, so I just kind of summarized it up. So with that, as I said, I'm not going to do all the talking. I do this at every church I've gone to, so this is kind of like my number 7 of doing a timeline, legacy, or life and legacy timeline. So as we go down, we got the level here all the way to 1960, and then 1960 beyond. We can see that we asked everyone to put their name on here. 1931 is the first name. Someone's pointing to that name. Yeah, Buddy. Okay. But just to let you know, and I like the 3D here that Jim has given us. This church is 123, kind of, going into 123-year-old congregation. And I was reading some of the history. You got the history books on the table there. If you haven't read those at all, please do that. And the history of the buildings, the wooden buildings that was there. The interesting thing I found about the history of Immanuel was when they built the church and stuff, they worshiped in the basement. And even when we come up to the new church, they worshiped in the basement before the whole thing was built, according to the history. So here we go with the names of the pastors. Pastor Schmelzer, Boyle, and Beal, or Brandt. There's Ed Brandt that teaches or was teaching at Concordia University, so probably a relative of this. Walter Beal, Matt Engel. So then we come up to 1930, and the teachers are down below here, because you did have a church or a school. We had a school here. So you had teachers. So we come up to 1930, 31, Buddy. I'm not going to go through all of them, but then 34, Amy. And we go on down, everyone is signed into the new church. So anyone remember from old church to new church? What's the story?
Well, I was 8 years old when they built this.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, we in the transition between the old building and the new building, I remember that we, as they were tearing it down, we worshipped, and I can't remember if it's the VFW.
Normanna Hall.
But that's where we. It's even on. Yeah, it's on. Is that right?
Yeah, Normanna Hall.
Yeah. So we had our church services at Normanna Hall between the two. And I know I've got a picture of my dad tearing down the old church But yeah, my relatives have been here for as long as yours, I think. Not quite, but yeah, clear back into golly, in the late 1800s, in the early 1900s. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it was like I say, I was only 8 years old when we built the new church, but it was a lot. We had a lot of fun. We had Sunday school down here. I do not remember.
Yes.
In the parsonage was next door, and the school was next door.
Yeah,
But our parents went to, our dads went to the old school. I remember him talking about Teacher Mandy. Yeah, right after him. So. Yeah. Anyway, they've got some memories, that's for sure.
good. Yeah, the old church was wooden structure,
Yes.
and this one is concrete, a lot of concrete or brick. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The original roof of this congregation.
I remember at 3 years old sitting on a chair. They were very straight up, down in the basement of the parsonage singing, "Jesus loves me, this I know." At 3 years old.
At 3 years old, yeah.
Yeah, so my dad helped put the roof on.
On this one. So
The new one.
the original or the new one coming. So. I noticed that in the history that you kept buying up different lots. You know, 2 lots here, 2 lots there. I was going to try to come up with what was the total price of building this church with a final, but I didn't come up with that. But yeah.
Does anybody know why they tore down the first church and built this new one? What was the reason? Was it size? Was the building falling apart? Anybody know?
Well, it was wood, and we needed a bigger church. It was a wood church, and we needed a bigger church. And the wood church faced to the corner, so it was, odd on the lot. That was the entry on that side, and it was old. So it was in 19. It probably says it here. And we met at Normanna Hall. So I remember that. I was little.
When we had Sunday school, there were cables between all these posts and curtains. And those were the Sunday school rooms.
Yeah.
And then up behind you was a stage. And there was a class up there. And the rest of the classes, they just pulled the curtains, and that was the Sunday school rooms until they built the educational unit in about 55.
Okay. Yeah, one thing that in 1929, these banners record that, what happened in 1929. Because this church was founded strictly German. So what was happening in the world in 1929? Yeah, Depression. First World War in that time frame too, as we think. 17. Yeah. So, I mean, that's one of the big reasons I think that it switched from the German to the English Yeah.
I read in the history here, they switched to the English because in World War II, the sentiment against the German ancestry here, and they were having armed riots in downtown Everett against the Germans here because they had World War II started. That's what it
Okay.
says in history here. That's why they decided that they either had to leave or they had to make a complete break with the Germans.
Okay, so maybe this is further down this way,
Yeah.
as far as the change of the name.
I think, I heard that
1944
people
they
would throw tomatoes at the church.
That what?
People would throw tomatoes at the church. That's
Tomatoes.
what I heard, yes.
Because of German.
Was that
Okay.
during World War II? Charlene, was that during World War II? When did that happen?
I think so. I think it was.
What did she say?
They threw tomatoes. There was
See, growing up, all my
Okay, yeah. Okay, let's go on as we built the new church. We go on as far as members joining, and in 51 to 57, Dale. The vicarage starts here in 59, 58, and 59. No, it says vicarage goes here. That's, huh? Oh, the parsonage. Okay, the parsonage was in that 59, 60 year frame. Okay, the building, not the vicarage itself. I'm sitting there going, did you really have a vicar back then? Wow. I mean, yeah, some of us weren't very, I was in short pants still in that time. They say, put on your big boy pants. Well, back then, 59, I was 7 years old, something like that. So we go down to 60, but as you can see on the names that have been added, all of you have signed in. As the time gets closer to today, more and more names are on our legacy. So more and more are here. Is there a certain period of time that there was a big growth for Immanuel? We'll move on. Yes? No? 60s? 60s. 50s and 60s? What attributed to the growth?
Well, if you want to look at the book, I was looking at it yesterday, and there was, one year there was like 60-some baptisms in 1 year.
Well, the back of the book, it has the baptisms in it, yeah.
Yeah. So you look at there was a tremendous amount of us being born during that time.
Baby boom?
Yeah.
Yeah. About that time too? Okay. Bringing
More
laborers and people, workers? Okay.
Yeah, Everett in the 50s was 30,000 people.
And now what is it?
100 something.
110,000? Okay. Yeah, that is. Okay. When did the Navy come in to Everett?
Yeah.
In the 90s? 1990s? Okay. That brought people into Everett. The economy here, is buoying, and the Navy. Yeah. Okay, so we go on down and we see even more. You have the pastors that have been here. Pastor Heck, of course, was just retired. And then you had vicars. And that was one thing that in the small groups that was really mentioned, that the congregation, I get the real strong feeling that the congregation wants to keep that ministry going. I know when I did my vicarage, it was something that really helps the formation of our future pastors. And then when I worked at the seminary, and the vicars came back, and they had to come through my office after they came back, and during their vicarage, they had to, the congregation filled out the vicarage evaluation inventory, VEI is what we called it. You guys probably had to do that too. Let me see. Probably not, because most of your vicars came from St. Louis, didn't they? All of them? Yeah, because by 19 Swan was here, and that's 2011. 2012, 11 and 12, they had stopped my program at the seminaries. So they didn't really go through a VEI. VEI was where the 7 members of the congregation could evaluate the vicars. And then it was computerized for us as a results. And then we could go through that with the vicar saying, here's your strength and here's areas you may need to work on before you step out and become a pastor. So that's what we did. But you had a great vicarage program going on with Swan and Noble, Atkinson, Arcuri, Bieberdorf, and Chin and Dylan Weber. And we have, you want to do that? Sure. We have something on the computer from.
Oh, well, I appreciate hearing that. That's an encouragement to me. Thank you.
You had asked earlier about Dylan's vicarage, which is a good question. Mm-hmm. So tell us about vicarage. Where was it, and what was it like?
Sure. I vicared at Immanuel Lutheran Church in Everett, Washington, which is about half an hour north of Seattle, which is about an hour north of where I'm from. So I got to go back home for vicarage, and my wife and I were extremely thankful for that. We kind of pigeonholed the seminary into placing us there because Reagan was finishing her last year at Pacific Lutheran University, which is in Tacoma, Washington. And this might be hard to believe, but there's not many LCMS vicarages available in the Northwest. And so the next closest vicar to me was in Gresham, Oregon. That was a Fort Wayne vicar. And then the next closest from St. Louis was in Southern California or Bismarck, North Dakota. Wow. So I was alone out there, but we were very thankful for it because it allowed Reagan to finish school while I was still on track to graduate when we desired to. I had a great vicarage. It wasn't the congregation that going in I would have ever seen myself at, but it was one of the most formative years of my life. I feel like I say that every year looking back, but it really was. I had a wonderful supervisor by the name of Kyle Heck, who recently retired. I left at the beginning of August, and he retired at the end of August. So
you left, and he just couldn't go on.
I wore him out.
Went really out on a high note.
But yeah, I got to preach a lot. I think I might have preached more than he did over vicarage, which I loved. I got to teach adult Bible study every other week. I got to teach confirmation. There's a lot of different things I got to do a lot of, and I was very, very, very thankful for that. Not to mention I was close to family, which was a huge benefit for our first year of marriage, to be there. with family and my friends, especially my friends at the University of Washington that are still there, many of which are not Christian. And so not to go back to the last question a little bit, but there is one more thing I thought of. To prepare St. Louis and the Midwest for what's coming, give people the benefit of the doubt. One of the things that I realized over vicarage, something that I kind of knew but was really internalized to me, was that a lot of people are not anti-Christian. A lot of people just don't know.
Right.
I was going to a Mariner game with one of my friends from college, and they were telling me, it was around Easter time, or maybe it wasn't a Mariner game. I don't know what we were doing, but we were together, we were talking, and they said, "Oh, it's Easter is soon, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And they asked me, "What is that?" That is something that I, as someone that grew up not Christian, very much took for granted.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't hate Christians, they just don't know.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do.
Sure,
there is
sure.
an antagonistic bend to a lot of people, but the majority of them just don't know. And if you can look for the good, if you can give people the benefit of the doubt, you will make it so much farther interacting with those people. But to get back to the vicarage conversation, that was probably one of the biggest things I learned on vicarage. I had a wonderful vicarage. I absolutely loved it.
So what was the size of the congregation, and what were some of the things besides the kind of the expected or usual? I don't want to in any way suggest that like preaching, teaching, confirmation aren't exciting, because they are, and that's the bread and butter of vicarage. But was there anything that you did that was part of your vicarage experience? So size of the congregation, then anything unique, especially in regards to it being in the Northwest?
Yeah, we so the size of the congregation, we worshipped about 130 every weekend at one service, one Bible study on Sundays, and that was all that we would do, which was great. I really appreciated having one service, not because of the workload, although that was a benefit, but because it made all of the members of the church worship together. And I think that that's such a huge thing to foster if you're able to do it. The people of the congregation knew each other and they loved each other, and that was such an encouragement to see from my perspective. What was the other? Something unique
Anything
about
that made your vicarage unique, or any kind of evangelism stuff that you did?
We didn't do too much evangelism, which was a disappointment for me, to be honest, especially being in downtown Everett. We lived in probably 3 blocks from actual, like, true downtown Everett, and so there is a lot of very stereotypical issues that you would see in big cities on the West Coast. Lots of homelessness, lots of drug use. But one of the unique things that I got to do was just be a part of that and see it. And talk to people about it. I would go on walks with, but Reagan would go down to Tacoma and stay with her parents a couple nights a week just to mitigate it'd be like a 2.5 hour drive each way, because it's north end of Seattle Metro to south end of Seattle Metro. So I would go on walks often in the afternoons when Reagan was not there. And I got to talk to a lot of people, a lot of homeless people, a lot of people that lived in the area, temporary housing, things like that. And to listen to them and their stories was wonderful. That I can't begin to describe the benefits of that, to just be able to sit there and listen. Whether they knew I was even going to be a pastor or not was besides the point, but a lot of those people just want someone to listen to, and so I was able to provide that in a few cases, which was very important to me. But I was trained as a Stephen minister there on vicarage, which was great. Nice. That's a big part of the congregation. They have a very active Stephen ministry program, which I think is what helps that congregation be so close to one another. I can't recommend it enough. I hope that whatever congregation calls me, Lord willing, has that program, and if not, it'll be a very easy thing for me to want to start there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it was Reagan was also commissioned or trained as a Stephen leader and Stephen minister, and that was probably the most unique in terms of like intentional ministry thing that we were able to do.
Okay. Yeah, the thought yesterday at the transition team was, I wish we had videos of the vicars. In Maui, what they went to the prior, well, Maui only had two pastors, in 50 years. So the one pastor was still there, retired, 81 years old now. But the second pastor is the one that left that I went in to do the transition with. And what Maui did was to get a video from him and then from the principals, because it has a school of over 200 kids. So they had prior principals. So yesterday morning, I thought, we could get the prior pastor video. Of course, that's Pastor Heck. He kind of just left, in August. But that's okay. He could tell a story. But the other thing was vicars. I said, we should have videoed some comments from the vicar, and I was told about this one with Vicar Dillon. He's seeing the light at the end of the tunnel right now. It's January, February, March, April, May. I think I'm not sure what the date of the call service is for him in May. I think it's May. And then graduation. So, but I was told about this video, and I thought that tells you about Immanuel. From an outside person, even though he was here for a year, and outside the story that he told.
We've had such an outstanding quality of vicar come to us. They are prepared, they're articulate, they know what they're doing. They're not just guys coming here to learn something. They're coming here to teach us as well as they develop into the pastoral program. And we have been very fortunate, and I think that the seminaries have done a great job preparing them. That makes a big difference.
Yeah. Stories then. Anyone want to comment on, and of course we got to remember that Greta was here in 2001 and still here, doing great ministry, as we can call her a called servant. So she stays on the roster. And I'm appreciative that she's teaching confirmation, so I can teach the adult Bible class. I can see where the pastor and the vicar could switch off once in a while. So stories, any as we go? The vicarage, go ahead, Ron.
Said about the vicars. I think the thing that I saw most amazing was these young men would come in here, fresh out of school, really didn't know what they were getting. They really didn't trust what they know. Of course, of ministries, especially Bible classes, doing numerous sermons, they learned that, hey, you know this stuff. I've learned it all in school already. That, to me, was the biggest revelation of all of it. It's not just one vicar being that way. They all were. A month or two after being here, it was kind of like a little kid in kindergarten. Their eyes pop open and they go, oh, wow, I can do this. It's a huge service.
Okay, and Greta,
So I had the privilege of being at seminary for most of the time with all of the vicars that we had here, either at the beginning of my seminary studies or at the end of them. And one of the things that y'all should be so proud of is this congregation, this vicarage here was one of the ones that was most sought after almost after every guy in my class wanted to come here. And so my classmate was Dustin Atkinson. So, and his wife, Ashley, she put it the best way on the call service day, on the placement service. She stood up and she said, "We won. We won the vicarage. We got the one that y'all wanted." And so, I mean, we should just be so proud that the previous vicars, when they would come back, would talk about this congregation as being the place to go, that it trickled down. And like everyone was hoping that this would be the place where they would be placed. So I think that's something to be very proud of for the work that we did with them, but also the impression that we left on them and that they left on us.
Yeah.
So it works both ways.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. Up here.
I want to give a shout out to Vacation Bible School. I think that is a wonderful outreach that we have. And I have heard that other churches, I mean, we have friends in Seattle, and there's no Vacation Bible School for them. And so they came up here to Vacation Bible School last year, back and forth every day from North Seattle, because they wanted their girls to be able to attend, you know, a Bible-based Bible school during the summer. So I think that is very important for us to keep on with.
Okay, good.
And thanks to the Jacksons for organizing all
And keeping the youth program, you know, the family and youth program going. That was one thing I asked when I was interviewed was, you know, with your vicar leaving, because I know vicars usually work with youth when they are in the vicarage. I know Dylan was leaving, and I said, is the youth, you have, as we used to call them, counselors? And they told me, you know, Jim and Sharon were the ones that were going to keep it going. But you see a youth program throughout the history of Immanuel Lutheran Church. I mean, when we had Walter League, you know, and I think I read even when the LCMS stopped Walter League, the Immanuel kept it going. So that was something interesting for me to read.
LYF,
Lutheran Youth Fellowship, Lutheran Youth Alive, Dave Anderson, the other songbook, compiled the other songbook. Dave Anderson, who now is, he started the Shepherd's Canyon Retreat down in outside of Phoenix, Arizona. And that's where church workers, not just pastors, but church workers and their wives can go if they feel burned out or need some professional week-long counseling type thing. And I was asked, and the elders blessed it, to go down the first part of February to be the chaplain at the Shepherd's Canyon Retreat, one that Dave Anderson started. So that's, if you want to say how highly they think of me, because I just did it in August, and there's a 2-year waiting period for chaplains to go down. It's like, okay, I must have done something good. Yeah. Anything else? Stories before we call? Yeah.
Vicars that we've had because they've been good,
Mm-hmm.
but that credit goes to Pastor Heck.
Oh, yeah.
His first love was teaching,
Mm-hmm.
and he allowed the vicars to learn here. And poor Dylan was here, I think, 2 weeks. Pastor was gone, and Dylan had to do the whole thing. And, you know, I mean, he dumped it right on him. And
That's
with our elders and that, you know, they're also supportive of him. But Pastor Heck, I would love to see that in a new pastor.
Okay.
A love for teaching.
Teaching.
Because if we continue the vicarage program, that's going to be a real key to success with the vicar program.
Okay, good. Other comments? Okay, yeah.
I remember one time Pastor Eck was talking, and Leslie Chen was here at the time. Leslie's a great guy. Pastor said, you know, I try to look for him, I can't find him. He's not here. Then I realized he's out in town. He said he takes off and goes walking, knocking on doors, talking to people. I mean, without being told to do it. He just took it upon himself. That's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, yeah. They, I think I've told almost everyone, I really think that Immanuel should continue the vicarage program. You got the ideal situation here. You got the parsonage. Vicar can be a single person to a family. I mean, I had a vicar that had four boys. You know, you'd probably have to put bunk beds in there, but anyway. And as I have mentioned before, the guideline, I'll use that term, is that your new full-time pastor has to have 5 years under his belt in the ministry to be a supervisor of the vicar. So a year after, depending on who God has chosen and who you call, a year after that your next pastor is here, you can get right back into the vicarage program. You don't have to wait 5 years. Now, if you called somebody out of the seminary, you would have to wait 5 years for him to get 5 years under his belt. So just to keep that in mind as we go forth. And someone brought up in one of the meetings, what about a person who's been an associate pastor? Well, that still applies. 5 years ministry under his belt, you can get back into the vicarage program. And you have somebody that knows somebody that can probably help you get back into the vicarage program. I won't say who that is, since he worked at one of the seminaries and he knows everyone at both seminaries. So I won't tell you. Okay. Anything else as we look at the legacy, the life? I mean, the small group comments, the ones that stick in my mind is healthy, strong, compassionate, loving. Those are some great words that tell the story of Immanuel Lutheran Church. It tells the story of who you are. In Hawaii, they say ohana. That's family. And that was one of the big things that I learned at Immanuel Maui, was that a congregation is not a bunch of individuals. A congregation is ohana, family. And I think that's where we're at with Immanuel, that you are a family. I felt it almost the first day I was here, that, you know, the togetherness, the taking care of each other. Those who, you know, break their legs, you know, people have taken care of them, okay? So, you know, different things that the family does. I mean, and you take care of each other as a family. Comments before we kind of close? No comments, no stories? Yeah, Peter. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering if there are more stories from some of the members who've been here a long time that could tell some of us who haven't been here that long. Or yesterday, Bob told us a couple of stories while we were at the transition team meeting. That was pretty interesting. I'd love to hear more stories.
More stories. We don't have to close. I mean, we're not at a time limit that says, whoops, we got to get out of here.
Back here several years ago, we had the church van, and we were picking up people down at the Navy base. And Bobby Snyder Sr. was driving the van. And we were over to his house one evening, and he had been down to Mexico, and he showed us this beautiful belt buckle he had and a beautiful inscription thing on it, the design. And my daughter looked at that and said, "That's a marijuana leaf." And Bobby says, "I was wondering why the Navy guys were looking at me funny."
Other stories, yeah.
Well, Dan Weiland and I were good buds, and we were working on his car down in the basement, and Pastor Weiland and Dan were kind of getting into it down there, and Dan was under his car. And so then it got quiet, and Dan said, "Is the old man gone?" And I said, "No, he's standing right here beside me." But I think we drove the trustees nuts because we were working on cars in the basement of the parsonage, and we took the engine out of his 40 Chev coupe and put an Olds engine in it, and that wasn't standard church practice, I don't think.
Yeah, it could be a good ministry, though. Go ahead, Rita.
Okay, ours is just the Hayek family. And we came in 54 and have been here off and on for some of us and on for mom. Excuse me. I remember 3 Sunday school teachers, Mrs. Ness, and the biggest memory I have of that was I got sick and I must have made a noise that sounded like barf was on the way. And she hustled me into that bathroom so fast. I nearly had a swirly. And then I remember Norm Busey, one of my teachers, and Bob Busey. And those 2 guys I seem to have, seems like several times, and a lot of miles around these posts.
I don't know if anybody mentioned Diane and Jim Woodard being the Walther League counselors for a while. Anyway, they had most of our 5 kids, and our middle son, Ben, they pulled him out of Snoqualmie, right below Snoqualmie Falls, out of the water, rescued him. And I'm sure they had many stories that they might like to share.
Yes, we did have lots of fun with those kids, but I'll tell you, the Busey kids were the cream of the crop, I'll tell you. One Sunday, I took the kids up and we went through all the symbolism up in the sanctuary, and I told them that the reason that the altar was shaped the way it was because in the beginning in Christianity, the catacombs, they had to do it in the catacombs or in the where the graves were, the stones were, and they used those as their altars. So pretty soon, church is over, and I get this phone call, and it's Joan. Yes, Diane, this is Joan Busey. Matthew came home with an interesting question today, and I just wanted to run it past you. He said that you told him that there were dead people buried in the altar. And I said, no, Joan, that's not exactly what I said. So you had a lot of memories with those kids.
For a number of years, my dear wife did the children's ministry on every other Sunday, up in front like Pastor does now. But the worst part about it for me was never knew what was going to come out of those kids' mouths. The big secret is before the ads, half the congregation would have been embarrassed one time or another with what their kids yapped out of their mouths. I was always afraid of what she was going to tell on me on the front.
And Art Link, other kids say the darndest things. Yeah.
I was just going to say that when we were in Waltherly, it was a big group, and that was before it was divided, so that we had postgraduates in our Walther League as well. But we had so much fun because Mark Luthans, well, for one thing, he had another car that was, then he bought a hearse. So we kids ran around in an old hearse. And in his glove compartment, he had a mannequin's hand wrapped up with some red stuff. And we'd go to the conventions and everything in that hearse. So Immanuel was known for that.
One of the other things that we did with Walther League, which was really wonderful, back then, we had real camaraderie with the Snohomish group. And so many times after our meeting, we would go to Snohomish, take ice cream and cookies and be with them, and they did likewise with us. And we did that for years. It was just wonderful. But the hearse thing was, I remember one of the workshop things that we went to, we took the hand and put it in the back tire of the hearse so that it was, this hand was sticking out from the end of the hearse. I mean, we weren't angels, but we sure had a lot of fun. And another fun thing, I know Fred remembers this, when we had the stage up in front, we would have talent shows, we'd have all kinds of different things, and the guys, we'd put on a fashion show, and the men were all wearing the women's gowns. And it was hilarious. It was just so much fun. Freddie and Mark and all these guys. I mean, it was just a lot of fun back then, and I sure miss that with the kids, doing that kind of stuff. I miss that stage because we did a lot of stuff with that stage up there. And the whole congregation, I mean, it was just fun. The choir would get involved, and different groups had different things, and it really brought everybody together. It was a lot of fun, and the good old days, I guess you call it. But I think we need a lot more youth involvement here, and I'd like to see more of that type of thing going on. It's tough to get the kids involved nowadays because of sports, for one thing. We didn't have select sports back when we were growing up, and we didn't have girls' sports. Now we've got everything, and Wednesday used to be a church night.
Mm-hmm.
Schools did not interfere with Wednesday nights. There was never anything scheduled on Wednesdays because that was church night. Nowadays, 7 days a week, and so it's really tough. I remember when Bob Mitchell was here as a DCE. It was really frustrating for him. He said, when I was in California, I had more kids outside the church coming with their friends than I had church members. And he said, here, I can't, they just don't seem to get involved. And we're all the way from Bothell to Marysville and all these different churches. And he said, what's going on? Well, mainly it was sports. The other thing that was, these kids at that particular time, all of the youth were in I would say the upper level of education. I mean, these were smart kids. And they not only were academically superior, they were also athletically superior. And it just happened at that particular time, that's what he was dealing with. And so, we've had our problems here too, periodically, because times change. And that, but I would really love to see, I love this family night that they're doing. I think that's great. But I'd sure like to see, more youth activities to keep them here, to keep the kids here. But we do have fun. Even at 83, we still have fun.
Just kind of a funny situation. Rita and I were grocery shopping one time, and I'm not sure if it was Monica or Paul. One of the kids was in the cart, and we're going down the aisle at, I believe, Safeway, and Pastor Weiland was in front of us, probably about half the way up. And the kid turned around and looked, "Look, Mom, it's God."
So when Pastor Weiland was here, he used to go in the sacristy during the hymns. And so we had been singing Stand Up for Jesus several times. And so Joan and Sue Berry got their heads together and said, this is ridiculous. We're sitting down singing Stand Up for Jesus. The next time this happens, we're going to stand up. So months go by, and we're sitting on the right side. Sue Berry's sitting way over on the left. And this hymn comes up, and they look at each other and nod. And she says, I'm going to stand up. And the whole family is pulling at her coat. No, Mom, no, please don't do this. So the two of them stand up. So pretty soon the rest of us start standing up. And when Pastor Weiland came out of the sacristy, everybody in the congregation was standing up, singing Stand Up for Jesus. And Pastor Weiland looked around, turned around, and went back in the sacristy. He thought he'd lost his place.
Any more stories? One thing, go ahead.
I hate to pick on him, but Dwayne Klein was such a fun guy. But he had line bifocals. He'd be reading the gospel, and the line in the bifocal block out a line, and he'd skip it. Just didn't see it.
That's good to know, since I have trifocals with lines. So if I skip, you know why, right? Yeah, I noticed that in the history of our Immanuel, that you've had other ministries here. You had the Pakistanis using the building. And I didn't realize this, but Roger Blessey, Pastor Blessey, had the deaf ministry here. I became good, close friends with him and his wife. They lived close to Lutheran Church of the Cross in Kent when I was the pastor there. And they would come up here to try to do the deaf ministry and start a deaf ministry congregation. But it really didn't go that well, or as well as it should have. And I had him teach members of Cross some sign language. I said, I'll put you to use. And I thought, oh, my path crossed with one of your extended ministry paths. And that is a good thing for our Savior, is to always think, how are we doing our vision and mission statement? How are we outreaching to others? How are we doing ministry? I mean, that's what we're called here to do as we think about the future. Any other stories before I don't want to close too soon, yeah.
So I have a story from Sunday school. Carol was my third grade teacher, I believe, and I remember being over in the fireside room and how cold it was Sunday mornings after church. Yeah, we would actually walk outside. There's a little walkway over there. Yeah, it was a really good memory. And then Diane was my 7th grade teacher. That was a lot of fun upstairs there, too. We got to help make stuff like these that hang up in the church. And Peter and Melinda were my high school teachers. Shout out to you guys. Yeah, I remember all you guys. And I have a lot of good memories growing up here. So, yeah. I remember getting my 3rd grade Bible, and that was a really big deal for me. I still have it, and a lot of people have gotten to read that. And all my kids have gotten one here, too, so that was pretty cool. Yeah. And then I got confirmed in 2001, and I have all my stuff from, like, all my cards and stuff that I got from the congregation, and I brought that to John's group, and they got to see everything that I had. So, yeah, a lot of good memories growing up here.
Thing that really impressed me. When I was confirmed, Pastor Zay gave us a little slip of paper. It was a prayer that you pray after communion. And I saved that prayer, and I say it after Sunday. I asked, Margaret shaking her head, oh, I'm sorry. I asked some of my classmates if they had that prayer that Pastor Zay had given us at confirmation, and they didn't remember it. But I was visiting Mildred Kirstein in the nursing home, and she had very, very little in possessions, but she had her confirmation, her catechism, her Bible, and a few brochures and so on. And she opened up her Bible and she showed me that prayer. And she was Buddy's age, I think, so 6 years older. So Pastor Zay had been giving the confirmants that little prayer to use throughout those years, and I didn't know it. It just amazed me that she had it. So we must have all received that prayer.
Yeah. Mike? Or go to Dave?
Thinking of, or Charlene talking about things that were given at special times, and Marion Klein started, Pastor Klein's wife, of course, she started baptismal banners. And that when a child, baby, was baptized, you would get a banner, and we still have Aaron's because he was baptized during that time. And I can't remember why it stopped. It's because Pastor Klein retired, and so it got stopped. But that is something else that maybe we would want to think about to hand down, as we'd have the candle for the baptized child, to be lit on their baptismal birthday. And so maybe that's just something we can think about if we want to do that. It was just made out of felt with the dove name and baptismal date on
The
it.
date, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Good. Got quiet. Okay, if I don't want to close it off, but as I said, this closes out the small groups. I will be probably writing something up in the newsletter about the summary, and it closes out the legacy, timeline, history, so you can see the past, present, and now we're going to look at the future. And that's where we're going with the transition team. Our next step is to take a look at the demographics. And we've already your Vicar Dillon had done demographics for this small area of Everett. And I've gone back to the Lutheran Church Extension Fund person in the district and asked to expand that more to cover all of Everett and beyond as far as looking at the demographics. And so that's the next task that the transition team will be looking at. And then the next one after that, which we may just skim over, will be looking at your vision and mission statement. We, Immanuel Lutheran Church, sinners saved by God's grace through faith in Jesus Christ alone, unite to share the gospel with all. The question I always ask congregation is, how are you doing that mission statement? Of course, the sermon this morning was kind of, in a way, part of looking at your mission statement. How do you witness for Christ? How do you even, if somebody opens that door, do you step through it? I notice you're going to church every Sunday. Would you like to come with me? It never hurts to do that. So that's the next two. And then we have Lent starting soon. Ash Wednesday is on Valentine's Day. Believe it or not, yeah. I mean, it's like, welcome, you just get done with Advent and 6 weeks later you have Lent starting. And so we're looking at the demographics, and then, as I said, the mission statement to say, how are we doing that? Then we start on the self-study. So that timeline as far as the transition journey is going, we're on target. If not, we'll a little bit advanced on target. And we will be, my goal is probably by the end of March, 1st of April, that we have the self-study and names to the district office. Okay. Someone asked with President Paul Linneman stepping down from being the district president, is that going to slow us down? The answer to that is no. He's going to stay in office until May, is what I heard last Monday on a Zoom with him. And we don't know who the next district president is. But it shouldn't slow us down, because you can turn I'm just kidding. Jenny is the one that runs the office. That's right. Right? That's correct. Am I correct? Jenny. Yeah. Jenny is the one that runs the office. So, and she's not leaving. So it's called. Yeah, and Dustin Gunkel, who's a close friend of my family. Yeah, so it should not slow us down as far as time is concerned. Once we have the self-study done and the names, the congregation gets to submit names of pastors that you might think would fit this ministry. You get to do that. We send that into the district. The district takes a look at those and probably those names, and probably ask them if they are willing to be on our call list. If they are, then they'll send their self-evaluation tool and their personal information file to the elders electronically, plus also the district president will ask the other 34 district presidents if they have somebody, because they have our self-study, they know who Immanuel Lutheran Church is, but they'll ask the other 34 district presidents if they have anyone that is looking for a call to this ministry. And then if they submit names, our district president will then get their self-evaluation tools and their personal information file and send that with the names we already have given them. So we could get anywhere from 6 to 12 to who knows how many names, how many candidates we would get. And then it's up to the elders to go through and the first thing the elders will do is make a phone call to the candidates to say, we have your name. Are you willing to be on our call list? Through the process of the call, yes or no. If they say no, that takes care of it. If they say yes, and then they're on the call list, and then they have to weed it out. Once we get the PIF, the personal information file, and the self-evaluation tools, once they come into the church, the congregation they can't leave this building because of the Privacy Act and everything else. But every member of the congregation that wants to know more about these candidates can come in and read what's in their PIF and set. Okay, so it's transparent for everyone. It's not the elders are going to make the decisions. No, it's the congregation that's going to make the decision when we get to there. Yeah. It's basically the same. Yeah, we don't. We don't usually get pictures. But I mean, with today's modern technology, I found about Immanuel Lutheran Church more than you really know that I found out about you before I said yes. But with the modern technology, you can go online and even probably, if they have sermons taped and that, but you can see their background too, where they are at in their life, with certain websites that are there. So you can see what the church is like, where they're at. You can go to LCMS.org and search for names and stuff. So I'm letting out too much out of the cat out of the bag. But that's okay, because you have to be knowledgeable of who God has chosen for you to be your next full-time pastor. And as I said, we're on schedule and moving forward this month and next. So, any other questions? No other questions? No other stories? I want to thank everyone, especially the transition team, for helping with this, putting this together, and doing the small groups. Transition team, would you stand, please, if you're here? There's some that aren't here. Okay. Again, thank you. They have put in quite a bit of work so far, and there's still work to do. But yeah, and God knows who He has chosen for Immanuel Lutheran Church. Let's close with the Lord's Prayer, and then Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Temptation, but deliver us from evil. And the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. We don't want dirty dishes left here. So.